Merlin Sports.
Hey everybody, this is Fenomena from Merlin Sports, and with me again is
DDawg, what's going on, brother?
hey, not much. Yeah, we're on the cusp of the Stanley Cup Finals starting on Saturday, so wanted to get together and break this thing down for our viewers.
Yeah,
So
I'm excited, man. It's been a really good playoffs. I think after the first round, there was some good series in the first round, but the second round and beyond have had some really good series. So hopefully this one's exciting. It's a little different, but it'll be exciting.
yeah, definitely we have like a good contrast of styles as well. Almost they say in boxing, styles make fights. So this is definitely going to be an interesting matchup. So we have from the Eastern Conference, the Florida Panthers, who are making their second consecutive appearance in the Stanley Cup Finals. Of course, they made it last year, and they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights. And we have Edmonton making an appearance, first appearance since the early 2000s.
18 years. 18 years.
Yeah, so definitely in the Connor McDavid era, his first appearance in the Cup, along with Leon Draisaitl. So let's get right into it. I don't know where do you want to start? So first of all, who do you think has had the easier road to the final?
You got to think that I know the Oilers had a grueling 7-game series with Vancouver and stuff. But I think they've had an easier road. If you look at who Florida's played, Florida played the defending Tampa Bay, who's still they have the holdovers from their championship years. Then they went to Boston, and Boston, they had a great year last year, had a very good year this year. Struggled at the end, but still a very good hockey team. And then they played the President's Cup winners, which is the New York Rangers, and they've actually dominated for the most part. I'd say all three of their series, but they've beaten 3 really good teams. I'm not saying Edmonton hasn't beaten 3 really good teams, but I mean the Kings are not on the level of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then the Boston Bruins. They were right up there for challenging for the President's Cup this year again. So they're still a very good hockey team, even though they lost a couple guys from the previous year. That was the record-setting team, right? And then you got the President's Cup champion Rangers with they faced 3 really top-level goaltenders, so they've had the harder road, I think. But Edmonton's battle-tested. I mean, I think you saw something Game 4 against the Dallas Stars that really changed the series. So it's going to be interesting, but that's what I think. I look at Florida as having the harder road.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that translates into Florida having the edge in this series? So I guess what we're getting into is like, who do you favor in this series?
I like the Panthers to win it, just from the fact that they are a different kind of team, and yeah, you can do things, but when they want to lean on you and take control of the game, they can. Right, and they have a very good goaltender, Bobrovsky. He's been lights out. Now he struggled last year in the finals, so that's an opportunity. And I know Edmonton's got Skinner, but Skinner played really well in Game 6 closeout. So he's found his form again after struggling in the Vancouver series. But I favor Florida. I think they're just their style of game is very tight checking, physical hockey that Edmonton wants to really make it a fast paced hockey game. They don't want to spend time in their end. And Florida, if they lean on you, they can do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, definitely. And when we mentioned at the onset, the contrast of style. So Florida plays a heavy game, a heavy forecheck, play the body type of game, and get good defense and great goaltending. So this will by far be Edmonton's toughest matchup. And I mean, just look through no fault of Edmonton. I mean, they scored LA Kings in the first round. They got the third string goalie from Vancouver, so they kind of lucked out there. And Ottinger, a great goalie. I mean, he had a more on Ottinger's recent success, probably one, not as great a season as last couple of seasons for Ottinger. So they caught Ottinger, not in his elite form. Still good, but not in his elite form. And I think Dallas just they just kind of ran out of gas. Looks like they had a tough series against Vegas in the first round, and they fell behind in that series and had to scratch and claw their way back. And then also Colorado too. That was a really tough series. So by the time they got to Edmonton, Edmonton just pulled away in those last couple of games. Like, all credit to Edmonton, and I think what Florida has to be cautious about, especially playing that physical style, is staying out of the box, because what we've seen, Edmonton's power play has been pretty great this playoffs. So if you start taking penalties, which sometimes Florida does, because that their style, when you're a physical team and you hit a lot, sometimes you do end up in the penalty box. Edmonton will make you pay. So I give the special teams the power play advantage to Edmonton. But when I look at the other side, I mean, we pretty much have Florida, the first round. Just look at the goaltenders that Florida's had to play. Vasilevsky, right? Vezina Trophy. And correct me if I'm mistaken, but he may have a Conn Smythe as well in his past.
I think he does. No,
okay.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay, then second round, Swayman, who's having he had such a good year in Boston that he, at the end there, he pushed out the last year's reigning Vezina Trophy, Linus Allmark, to the sidelines. So, that's how good Swayman's been. And then, of course, Shesterkin on the Rangers.
He's the best goalie in the world, right?
Yeah, Rangers, I mean, that's flattering that series went 6 games. It's all because of Shesterkin. So 3 of the elite goalies in this league that Florida just, went through. And in each series, I had, the series outcome was never in doubt, even playing those top goalies. And I think, as good as Stuart Skinner has, kind of bounced back the playoffs, I don't know. Yeah. I think Florida, they might feast on him just because, they are going to, they're going to make things difficult in the crease, right? Like go in the blue paint, bump him, stick him. Like they're going to do things to him that the other teams in the West were not willing to do. So they're going to make life uncomfortable for Stuart Skinner, and I wonder if he's going to be able to handle it. I mean, I look at it this way, right? Like Edmonton against Vancouver, they had to go to their backup, and then Stuart Skinner ended up reclaiming the number 1 goaltending position. But I don't know if you're still unsettled at the goaltending position. I mean, and you're in the Stanley Cup final. I don't know. I think that's kind of bad. That's kind of a bad omen for Edmonton.
Yeah. Well, I think it's safe to say, man, that the Oilers got here because of their stars, right? And I got to say, it's really been a coming out party for Evan Bouchard. He is fantastic. Speaking to somebody the other day, and he said he's sneaky good, and I said he ain't sneaking up anybody anymore. I rate him as good as Drew Doughty was in his heyday. Yeah, that's how good he's been playing. That's how good I think he is, and he's going to get better. But this series is really about the superstars of Edmonton versus more of a very professional, grinded out hockey team, right? They don't. I mean, they got a couple names on Florida, but they're not the Connor McDavids, Leon Draisaitl's of the world, or the Evan Bouchards. They don't have anybody that stands out like that. But they're a very businessman like team, and they are. You're right. Florida is a physical, tough team. They don't necessarily have a lot, they're not screaming with tough guys all over their roster, but they play tough. They play a physical brand. Every player on that team throws their weight around. They're not afraid to do that. I'm not sure Edmonton has that kind of team that's going to like the grinding. I mean, I think that's why the Boston series went a little longer than it was. But you're right. Florida dominated every series they were in. I think the 6 games for the Rangers was flattering. They could have lost in 4 straight.
Yeah,
that's how good Florida was, right?
Completely agree. Well, not 4 straight. I think 5 would have been reasonable.
Yeah, but they could have won every game.
Yeah, it was flattering to. I mean, you saw in some of those instances. I mean, Bennett just running wild there, like completely unchallenged, right? Scores the winning goal. Or he scored a goal late in the game. I think it was game 5, and then he even engaged with Kreider, like bumped him after he scored. And he didn't want any part of it. They were completely defeated. If you read the body language, they just couldn't cope with Florida, and Florida just breaks you down. And I think that's probably like the key matchup here is will Edmonton be able to stand up to the test, or will they break down like all those other teams did? Because they pretty much surrendered. But the thing is that I was looking, I was thinking before the last 2 games of the Edmonton Dallas series, I was thinking like no team in the West has a chance. Florida's just going to steamroll whoever comes out of the West in the final. But actually, Edmonton showed me. They showed me something. McDavid and Draisaitl, like you mentioned, they're stars. So many of these other teams that have been ousted in the playoffs. You look at their top 6 players, and they have trouble producing. And Edmonton is like all their elite talent came to show. And the thing is that you mentioned Bouchard, but I think another kind of player that could pose problems is Zach Hyman, because he just has a nose for the net. Like the way Hyman scores is how you score in the playoffs. Deflections, rebounds, crash the net. And a lot of times these other skilled teams, their game just doesn't translate in the playoffs. They don't have, like, their stars do not know how to play when there's no ice, there's no room on the ice. If they can't score a highlight reel goal, they can't play. But I think Edmonton, like, they showed me that they can win that tight game. So it's given me a little pause for thought here in that, man, I think this series is going to go 6 or 7 games, just based on. And the thing is like McDavid, right? Like you got to think that
he's a guy that can win a couple games by himself.
Yeah, right? and it's his 9th season. It took him 9 years to even make a cup final, and I think he's probably under no illusion that like this that you get here every year, right? Like this you have to seize the opportunity when you're there, because you'll never know when you get back.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably pretty aware of that. And like you said, like he can win 1 or 2 games just by himself, right?
Well, I mean, you just look at the goal he scored against the first goal of the game against Dallas the other night. I mean, that was all him. That was all him.
And that was against the top D pair on Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Heiskanen, like their stud defenseman. He just made them all look foolish.
Yeah. So he could do that, and Draisaitl has that same type of capability. I agree with you though. I mean, Hyman's a lunch pail guy. That's kind of the best way to describe him. He finds the spot. He finds spaces in the offensive zone. He is fortunate, let's say, because he plays with two of the best players in the world, that he can get lost. He's a very good hockey player. I'm not disregarding him, but he can get lost out there because you got McDavid, you got Draisaitl, and then you got Bouchard in the back. But Edmonton wants to go with their 5 best players in terms of their 2 top defensemen and those 3 guys. They're a very hard team to deal with because you got a lot of individual talent, right? I mean, you saw Bouchard make some moves, even himself in the playoffs, and just get to open spots to take shots at the net, right?
And I think for Edmonton to be competitive and have a chance at this, besides their top end talent, I think you got to have big games from guys like Evander Kane, because like his style, it's meant for a team like Florida. So I wonder if you will see a bigger role from the likes of Evander Kane and deeper in their lineup, who do play a more physical style, especially if the top lines kind of negate each other, because they'll put their top, they'll try to neutralize McDavid and Draisaitl, and that may open things up further down the roster. And a guy like Kane, like this, he should be able to seize the opportunity.
Yeah. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Kane will be. Their secondary players have to be factors, right? They're not going to win hockey games if they're not factors, right? They're not going to win, right? Even though as good as McDavid is, like I said, he can win a couple games by himself. They're not going to win based on that piece. So it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be. You said at the beginning, but contrast of styles. It's going to be very interesting that way. But as I said before, and you're kind of leaning that way from what I'm reading, is that Florida is the team that's going to win. Like, you think Florida's going to win too, right? That's what I'm reading.
Sure. Well, let's come out with it. Yeah, let's get to our picks. So, I could start. Yeah. I'm taking Florida to win in either 6 or 7, because I think Edmonton is going to put up as much resistance as possible. And I just think that Florida is just, they just have a deeper lineup, and being there last year and being bitterly disappointed, I think that they have enough to pull it out this time. So I'll take Florida, and if as a bonus, like who I think might win MVP. I mean, you got the big names out there like Tkachuk and Barkov, but man, if you saw the last series against the Rangers, and I was really impressed with Sam Bennett. So as a sleeper for MVP Conn Smythe, I'm gonna go with Bennett, because it's a type of series that like that super pest, but can back it up and score big goals, and especially since there might be muscle memory from Battle of Alberta days from when Bennett and Tkachuk were on Calgary and had a lot of battles with Edmonton.
Yeah, so that's something we didn't talk about in this, is the the old Calgary Flames sort of let's say, how they say, historical piece, right? You got some guys who know the rivalry a little bit, and so they have already built-in hatred, right? You can't play on a team like that and then forget about it, right? So I said at the beginning I like Florida too. I think they're the best team in the playoffs. They have been one of the top teams in the league, and they've been on a 3-year build, right? A few years ago, they were they snuck up and beat Boston with their historical piece, and then they had lost the previous year as the President's Trophy winner, and then Boston had that record year, and then Florida beat them, and then Florida came back this year, and they battled for most of the season until they overtook them at the end, and they've been on a mission since last year. When they lost, and Tkachuk, he had a broken sternum, so it was hard for he still gutted it out, but I think now he's coming back, and He wants it, and I think this team has been on a mission to get back to the Stanley Cup final. They weren't happy with the way they played in the final last year, and I liked them in 6 games. Bennett's a nice pick for Conn Smythe, but I'm going to go with I think the guy who's kind of been not under the radar, but underappreciated, and I'm going to go Bobrovsky. I think he's a Conn Smythe winner. I just think he's had to face the best goalies on the other side. He's had to face some elite goaltending, and he's stood up to the challenge, and he's proven to be the better of the goaltenders that he's going against. Even Shesterkin, he dueled him as well as anybody, right? I think, you know, if you look at the Carolina series with the Rangers, they were the second best team in that series, but Shesterkin kind of won it for them. But because Anderson is not that good of a goalie, I never thought he was. But against Florida, they had somebody to stand up to him, right? And so I think he's the guy, sleeper going, and I think they'll win.
Okay, yeah. So we're both in agreement that Florida has the edge. But I mean, I'm excited that I think it's going to be a great Cup final. And you know what? I would be happy to be wrong, because it would mean that Edmonton wins and get to see Connor McDavid and company hoist a cup. So it wouldn't bother me. It wouldn't bother me in the slightest.
I'm kind of 2 ways there, man. Number one, I want you'd want to see if we're wrong that a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. But if McDavid doesn't win the Stanley Cup in Edmonton, is he looking to move in a few years? Right.
Well,
and would he come home to Toronto? Right. Because I think that's the piece for Toronto. I know everybody loves Matthews and Nylander, but Matthews, I think you're seeing the difference between Matthews and McDavid in these playoffs. Right. And I know Matthews was out for a few games in the playoffs, but I think you see the difference between Matthews and McDavid. If you take McDavid out of the lineup for Edmonton, I don't think they win. They win any series, or they even win any games, right? That's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Well, even when he doesn't produce, he's still so much of a threat that everybody has to watch him, right? And game 2 against Vancouver, they came back. They go to overtime, and how did they win in overtime? McDavid skates the length of the ice, and nobody could stop him. And then sets up a pass across, and it bounces off somebody in the net. Right, so you see, there's a difference between those two levels, and I think Matthews is an all-time scorer, but I don't think he's as good as a guy like Connor McDavid, and I don't think it's even close.
Well, I mean this is a conversation for another day, but all around, I mean, McDavid is the best player all around.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty much consensus. But I think we're in for, and the thing is this, that both Edmonton and Florida will have to make some big decisions on contracts coming up, especially when you achieve success. You can't keep everybody, and people need to get paid. So both these teams, I mean, I don't even think they're looking ahead to that now. They're just focused on the Cup Finals. But yeah, there will be some internal housekeeping that they will have to do, and they may not be able to keep everybody. So I guess they'll cross that bridge when they come to it. But for now, we're just enjoy the Cup Final, and then quick before we go, as a bonus pick, who you think's going to take the NBA? Championship.
It's going to be very tricky. I think Boston going in is the favorite, but I'm going to pick an upset and say Dallas is going to win the NBA championship. I think Kyrie Irving, he's got a lot to prove. He's a guy that's been sort of labeled a cancer, and I think he's found his home. He found a coach that he can play for in Jason Kidd, and he's flourishing. And then you got a guy like Luka Doncic. Those two guys, when they're on and they're scoring, they can't be stopped. There's not a player in the league that can stop any of those two. So I think Dallas is gonna take it. It's gonna be interesting, but I think Dallas can.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, wow. Yeah, well, I mean, I think Boston is favored and they're expected to win, but I mean, they've barely been challenged in the playoffs, and actually in the regular season, they kind of went wire to wire. So, I mean, you got to think the only danger with that is you don't face any scrutiny or like adversity. And then when you finally do, if it's in the finals, like you may not be able to cope too well because you haven't had to. So that's the danger with Boston. But I think Boston has enough to pull it out. But
they should win.
I think it's going to be a close series, I think.
Yeah, they should win. But I just give the edge to to Dallas with the fact that Kyrie Irving's coming back and he's got a lot. He wants. It's going to be the sort of like Vince Carter coming back to Toronto or LeBron going back to Cleveland. That's the kind of hatred I think he'll get. And that motivates a guy like him. Right? Because he's that good. As much as I'll shit on Duke players, because I do. But he is really, really good. And when he's on, there's not a guy in the league that can stop him. I don't care if you put a 7-foot guy on him or you put a 6-foot guard on him. He can score against anybody in the NBA.
He's definitely got the best handles in the league. Like, so slick with that ball.
Yep.
Okay, well, it's been great chatting with you, and man, let's get it on. So thanks everyone for joining, and thanks DDawg. We'll talk to you soon.
Anytime, brother. Take care.